Get comfortable. Close your eyes. Tonight, we are going somewhere that has swallowed ships whole. Somewhere that has pulled aircraft from clear blue skies without warning. A place where compasses spin without reason. Where radios go silent mid-sentence. Where entire crews vanish and leave their vessels sailing on alone. A roughly triangular patch of ocean between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. About 500,000 square kilometers of warm blue water. One of the most heavily traveled stretches of sea in the world. And one of the most mysterious. Or so the story goes. Just listen.
Chapter 1. The Origin. The Bermuda Triangle did not always have a name. For centuries, sailors crossing that stretch of the Atlantic reported strange experiences, compass anomalies, sudden violent storms, an unsettling sense of disorientation. But these were scattered accounts, unconnected, unremarked upon by the wider world. The triangle as a concept, as a named, defined, mythologized place, is surprisingly recent. It was essentially invented in the 1950s. And it was invented, like so many modern myths, by a magazine article.
In September 1950, a journalist named Edward Jones published a small article in a Miami newspaper. It mentioned, almost in passing, that an unusual number of ships and aircraft had disappeared in the area between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. The article attracted little attention. But 4 years later, in 1954, a writer named George X. Sand published a longer piece in Fate magazine, a publication dedicated to paranormal phenomena, describing what he called a series of strange disappearances in a roughly triangular area of the Atlantic. Still, the concept did not fully catch fire. It simmered. It waited. Then, in February 1964, a writer named Vincent Gaddis published an article in Argosy magazine. He called the area the Deadly Bermuda Triangle. It was the first time those three words appeared together. Gaddis was a writer of pulp fiction and paranormal speculation. Not a scientist, not a maritime historian, not a geographer, but he had a gift for narrative. He gathered the scattered accounts of disappearances, arranged them into a pattern, gave the pattern a name, and suddenly there was a place. A defined, nameable, terrifying place. The human mind loves patterns. The human mind loves names. Give something a name and it becomes real. The Bermuda Triangle became real. The myth exploded into mainstream consciousness in 1974 with the publication of Charles Berlitz's book, simply titled The Bermuda Triangle. Berlitz was a skilled popular writer, grandson of the founder of the Berlitz language schools, a man who understood how to make a story compelling. His book sold over 20 million copies worldwide. It was translated into dozens of languages. It spent months on bestseller lists. It described in vivid, breathless detail the disappearances of ships and aircraft, the theories of alien abduction and Atlantean technology, the compass anomalies and the walls of water and the strange lights in the sky. It was enormously entertaining. It was also, as subsequent researchers would demonstrate, riddled with inaccuracies, exaggerations, and outright fabrications. But by the time anyone checked the facts carefully, the legend was already too large to stop. The first serious debunking came in 1975, just 1 year after Berlitz's book, when a researcher named Lawrence David Cush published The Bermuda Triangle Mystery, Solved. Cush actually went back to the original sources.
He checked Lloyd's of London insurance records. He read Coast Guard reports. He studied weather records for the dates of the alleged disappearances. What he found was striking. Many of the ships and aircraft described as mysteriously vanished in the Bermuda Triangle had actually disappeared in other parts of the ocean entirely. Some had sunk in storms, perfectly explicable storms that Berlitz had simply omitted from his accounts. Some had disappeared nowhere near the triangle. Some had not disappeared at all. They had arrived safely at their destinations, and Berlitz had simply not mentioned this.
One ship, described as vanishing without trace in calm weather, had actually sunk in a hurricane. This is the story of the Bermuda Triangle in miniature, a place that exists powerfully and persistently, primarily in the human need for mystery, in the need to believe that the world contains zones of the inexplicable, places where the normal rules do not apply. The ocean is vast and dark and genuinely dangerous. It does not need our myths to be frightening. But we gave it one anyway.
Chapter 2: The Disappearances. The Bermuda Triangle may be largely myth, but the disappearances that built the myth, many of them are real. Real ships, real aircraft, real people who set out on ordinary journeys and never arrived. The ocean claimed them, as the ocean claims things, without explanation, without ceremony, without returning what it takes. Whether the triangle had anything to do with it is another question entirely. But the losses are real, and they deserve to be treated as such.
The earliest disappearance commonly associated with the Bermuda Triangle is that of the USS Pickering in 1800. A naval schooner carrying 90 men that sailed from Guadeloupe bound for Delaware and was never seen again. No wreckage, no survivors, no explanation. Though it should be noted that 1800 was not a safe year for sailing in the Atlantic. Storms were frequent and navigation was primitive by modern standards. The Pickering's disappearance was a tragedy. Whether it was a mystery is less certain.
The Mary Celeste, one of the most famous ghost ships in history, is frequently cited in connection with the Bermuda Triangle, though it was actually found drifting not in the Triangle, but near the Azores, far to the east. In December 1872, the brigantine Mary Celeste was discovered sailing erratically under partial sail. When a crew from a nearby ship boarded her, they found the vessel entirely abandoned. The cargo of alcohol was intact, personal belongings were untouched. The captain's logbook was present, last entry dated 10 days earlier. The lifeboat was gone. The crew of 10, including the captain's wife and 2-year-old daughter, had vanished. No trace of them was ever found. The most likely explanation, debated by historians ever since, is that the cargo of industrial alcohol began producing fumes. The captain feared explosion and ordered everyone into the lifeboat, and the lifeboat then became separated from the ship in bad weather. Probable, plausible, and yet the image of that empty ship sailing herself, sails set, table laid, clock ticking, with no one aboard and no explanation for their absence, is one that refuses to leave the imagination. The Ellen Austin incident of 1881 adds another layer of strangeness. The American schooner Ellen Austin reportedly encountered a derelict ship in the Atlantic, sailing without any crew aboard. The Ellen Austin's captain put a prize crew aboard to sail the vessel to port.
the two ships became separated in fog. When they found each other again, the prize crew had vanished. The ship was empty again. The captain allegedly put a second crew aboard. The ship disappeared again into the fog. This time, it was never seen again. This story has become one of the most repeated in Bermuda Triangle literature. It has also proven almost impossible to verify. No contemporary records clearly confirming the incident have been found, which raises the uncomfortable possibility that the ocean does not need to be mysterious to be frightening. But our storytelling fills in the gaps regardless. The fog, the empty ship, the crew that was there and then was not. These details lodge in the mind like splinters, and they do not come out easily.
Chapter 3, Flight 19. December 5th, 1945. A clear afternoon over the Atlantic. 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers take off from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale in Florida. A routine training exercise. Navigation training, flying east over the ocean, north, then back to base. The aircraft are well maintained. The weather is described as fair to partly cloudy. The pilots are experienced. The lead instructor, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, has logged over 2,500 hours of flight time. There are 14 men across the 5 aircraft. All 14 will be dead before nightfall. None of them will ever be found.
The first sign of trouble comes approximately 90 minutes into the flight. Taylor contacts the control tower at Fort Lauderdale. His words, recorded at the time, are among the most chilling in aviation history. He reports that both of his compasses are malfunctioning. He is not sure of his position. He says, and this detail has been repeated and analyzed for 80 years, everything looks wrong. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should. Controllers attempt to help him navigate. Other aircraft in the area try to communicate. Taylor refuses to change his radio frequency, afraid he will lose contact with his student pilots if he does. He seems to believe he is over the Gulf of Mexico rather than the Atlantic. He flies north, trying to reach land, when north takes him further out to sea. The transmissions grow weaker.
The voices more strained. The last clear transmission from Flight 19 is received at around 7:15 in the evening. Then, silence. A search and rescue flying boat, a PBM Mariner with a crew of 13, was dispatched almost immediately after contact was lost. 23 minutes after takeoff, it too disappeared. No distress signal, no wreckage found that night. A ship in the area reported seeing a fireball in the sky, suggesting the Mariner may have exploded. PBM Mariners were known to be prone to fuel leaks and were nicknamed flying gas tanks by their crews. A spark from any source could be catastrophic. But no wreckage from the Mariner was definitively identified either. 27 men gone in a single evening. The largest peacetime search in naval history was launched the following day. 300 aircraft, 18 ships, submarines. They found nothing. Not a life raft. Not a seat cushion. Not a body. The most likely explanation for Flight 19, accepted by most aviation historians, is a combination of compass malfunction, pilot disorientation,
and a fatal navigational error that took the aircraft further and further out to sea until they ran out of fuel.
The Atlantic at night in December is unforgiving. Aircraft that ditch in heavy seas often sink within seconds. The Gulf Stream, which flows through that region, moves quickly enough to disperse wreckage over enormous distances. These explanations are rational. They are probably correct. And yet, the words of Lieutenant Taylor stay with you. Everything looks wrong. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should. The voice of a man who knows something is terribly wrong, but cannot understand what. Cannot find the horizon. Cannot find the land. Circling over a darkening ocean. Running out of time.
Chapter 4: The USS Cyclops. There are losses that defy easy explanation. Not because they are supernatural, not because the evidence points to anything beyond the ordinary dangers of the sea, but because the sea gave back nothing. No wreckage, no bodies, no final transmission, no last entry in the log. Simply absence. 306 people who were there and then were not. The USS Cyclops is the largest single loss of life in the history of the United States Navy outside of combat. And it remains, over a century later, completely unexplained.
The Cyclops was a collier, a coal and cargo supply ship, operated by the United States Navy during the First World War. She was enormous for her time, 542 feet long, displacing 19,000 tons when fully loaded. In January 1918, she was sent to Brazil to pick up a cargo of manganese ore, used in the production of munitions for the war effort. She loaded approximately 11,000 tons of ore at the port of Salvador. On March 4, 1918, she departed Barbados, her last confirmed port of call, bound for Baltimore, Maryland. She was never seen again. She sent no distress signal. No wreckage was ever found. No bodies, no life rafts, nothing. She simply ceased to exist somewhere between Barbados and the United States.
The investigation that followed raised more questions than it answered. The Cyclops was known to have mechanical problems. One of her two engines was not functioning properly when she departed Barbados. She was carrying a cargo that may have been improperly loaded. Manganese ore is extremely dense and heavy, and if distributed unevenly, can make a ship dangerously unstable. Her captain, Commander George Worley, was a controversial figure. German-born, he had changed his name from Georg Wiechmann after the United States entered the war against Germany. Some historians have speculated about sabotage or even deliberate surrender to German forces. No evidence for this has ever been found. Others have suggested the ship was sunk by a German submarine. German naval records, thoroughly examined after the war, contain no record of any attack on the Cyclops.
The most likely explanation, accepted by most naval historians, is that the Cyclops suffered a catastrophic structural failure in heavy seas. A ship that size, carrying that weight of dense ore with a compromised engine, in the unpredictable weather of the Atlantic in early March, could have gone down very quickly. Quickly enough that no distress signal was possible. Quickly enough that nothing floated free. The ocean swallowed her whole. 306 people. Soldiers and sailors and civilians. People with names and families and plans for after the war. Gone in whatever time it takes for 19,000 tons of ship and ore to slide beneath the surface of the Atlantic. The Navy's official conclusion, stated simply and without embellishment,
is that the disappearance of the USS Cyclops remains one of the most baffling mysteries in the annals of naval history. 100 years later, that conclusion has not changed.
Chapter 5. The Science. Science does not believe in the Bermuda Triangle. Not as a special place. Not as a zone of anomalous danger. The data simply does not support it. Lloyd's of London, the world's leading maritime insurance market, which has been tracking ship losses for centuries, does not charge higher premiums for vessels traveling through the Bermuda Triangle. The United States Coast Guard does not consider it a particularly dangerous area. A study by the World Wildlife Fund in 2009 identified the world's most dangerous waters for shipping. The Bermuda Triangle did not appear on the list. Statistically, when you account for the volume of traffic passing through the area, one of the busiest shipping and aviation corridors in the world, the rate of disappearances is not significantly higher than anywhere else in the ocean. The Triangle is not special.
And yet, the ocean in that region is genuinely unusual. And science has some genuinely fascinating things to say about why. Methane hydrates.
Beneath the floor of the ocean, in the Bermuda Triangle region, as in many areas of the continental shelf, there are enormous deposits of methane gas locked in ice-like structures called hydrates. When these hydrates destabilize, due to changes in temperature or pressure, they can release massive bursts of methane gas. The gas rises through the water column, reducing the density of the water dramatically. A ship sailing over a methane eruption could theoretically lose buoyancy so suddenly that it sinks almost instantaneously, with no time to send a distress signal, with no time for the crew to react. This theory, proposed by Australian scientists Joseph Monahan and Ben Clennell in 1996, generated considerable excitement. Subsequent research has been more cautious. Large methane eruptions in the Bermuda Triangle area are not currently active.
But the geology is there. The potential exists. And the image of a ship simply dropping through the surface of the ocean into a column of rising gas is one that the scientific literature has not entirely dismissed. Rogue waves. For most of maritime history, rogue waves were considered sailors' mythology, stories told in port, embellished with each retelling. Waves of 30 meters or more, appearing from calm or moderately rough seas, without warning. Walls of water tall enough to swallow ships entirely. In 1995, the Draupner oil platform in the North Sea recorded a wave of 25.6 meters, in sea conditions that should have produced maximum waves of half that height. Rogue waves are real. They are now understood to be a product of constructive interference, multiple wave systems combining at the same point to produce a wave far larger than any individual component. The waters of the Western Atlantic, where warm Gulf Stream current meets colder Atlantic water and where weather systems frequently collide, are among the conditions most likely to produce rogue waves. A vessel struck by a 30-meter rogue wave in the open ocean would likely sink within minutes.
With no warning, with no time for a signal, leaving little or nothing on the surface. The ocean does not need supernatural assistance to be lethal. It has physics for that. And physics, at its most extreme, is quite terrifying enough. The weather in the Bermuda Triangle region is also genuinely extraordinary.
The area sits at the western edge of the North Atlantic, where Caribbean tropical systems develop and intensify. Hurricanes form here. Waterspouts are common, rotating columns of water and air that can reach heights of thousands of feet. Sudden, intense thunderstorms can appear within minutes from apparently clear skies. The interaction between the warm Gulf Stream water and cooler air masses can create localized weather events of extreme violence. Highly localized, difficult to predict, and potentially devastating to small aircraft or vessels. Pilots and sailors who have crossed the region repeatedly report that the weather there has a quality of unpredictability, a capacity to change faster and more dramatically than almost anywhere else they have flown or sailed. This is not myth. This is meteorology. And sometimes meteorology is enough. Sometimes the sky simply opens and the sea simply closes, and there is nothing left to find.
Chapter 6. The Theories. Not everyone is satisfied with methane and rogue waves. Not everyone finds the rational explanation sufficient. Perhaps because the rational explanation, however accurate, does not answer the question that really haunts us. Not how did they disappear, but where did they go, and whether whatever took them is still there. The theories surrounding the Bermuda Triangle range from the scientifically plausible to the breathtakingly imaginative. All of them tell us something, not necessarily about the triangle, but about us. The Atlantis theory is perhaps the most enduring. Edgar Cayce, an American mystic active in the early 20th century, predicted in 1940 that the remains of Atlantis would be found near the Bahamas around 1968 or 69. In 1968, a formation of large flat stones was discovered off the coast of North Bimini in the Bahamas. The Bimini Road, as it became known, consists of large limestone blocks arranged in a curved linear pattern on the ocean floor. It attracted enormous attention. Atlantis researchers declared it a man-made structure, a road, a wall, a harbor from the lost civilization. Geologists examined it and concluded it was a natural formation, limestone that fractures naturally into rectangular blocks along stress lines. The debate has not been entirely resolved to everyone's satisfaction, but the mainstream scientific consensus is clear. The Bimini Road is natural. Atlantis is not beneath the Bermuda Triangle. Though it is worth noting, Cayce's prediction was for 1968 or 69. The Bimini Road was discovered in 1968, which is either a remarkable coincidence or exactly the kind of thing our pattern-seeking minds were made to notice.
The extraterrestrial hypothesis has been a constant companion of Bermuda Triangle literature since the 1960s. The argument runs roughly as follows. The triangle lies at a point where something beneath the ocean's surface interferes with navigation equipment. This interference is not natural, it is technological, and its technology is not human. Proponents point to the compass anomalies reported by pilots and sailors, instruments spinning without cause, electronic equipment failing simultaneously, the strange sense of disorientation reported by those who passed through safely. They point to the lights, strange glowing objects seen beneath the surface of the water, unidentified aerial phenomena reported by military pilots in the region. The United States Navy has acknowledged unexplained aerial phenomena in Atlantic waters, though not specifically in connection with the Bermuda Triangle.
The extraterrestrial theory is not provable. It is also, given what we do not yet understand about what operates in and above our oceans, not entirely dismissible. We have mapped less than 20% of the world's ocean floor. The deep Atlantic in the Bermuda Triangle region is largely unknown territory. Unknown territory has always attracted explanations. The more unknown, the more elaborate the explanation.
There is a theory involving the geometry of the Earth itself. The Bermuda Triangle is one of only two places on Earth, the other being the Devil's Sea off the coast of Japan, where true north and magnetic north align. Normally, there is a difference between the two, called magnetic declination, and navigators must account for it. In these two locations, the declination is 0. Some researchers have argued that this alignment creates unusual electromagnetic conditions, conditions that can affect navigation equipment and human perception. Mainstream science is skeptical. The alignment of true and magnetic north at these locations is a known navigational fact. It is charted and accounted for. It should cause confusion only to navigators who are unaware of it.
Though Christopher Columbus, sailing through the triangle in 1492, did record in his log that his compass behaved strangely in these waters. He also recorded seeing a fireball fall into the sea and a mysterious light on the horizon the night before he first sighted land.
Chapter 10. The Truth. So what is the truth about the Bermuda Triangle? After everything, after the disappearing ships and the lost aircraft, after the methane hydrates and the rogue waves, after Atlantis and the extraterrestrials and the electronic fog, after Flight 19 and the USS Cyclops and Mercy Brown and Bruce Jernan, what do we actually know?
We know that the Bermuda Triangle is a real place. A roughly triangular stretch of ocean in the western North Atlantic, between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, covering approximately 500,000 square kilometers of some of the deepest, most geologically active, most meteorologically unpredictable water on Earth. We know that ships and aircraft have disappeared in this region. We know that some of these disappearances have been adequately explained: storms, navigation errors, mechanical failure, human error. We know that some have not been explained, at least not to the satisfaction of everyone who has examined them. We know that the rate of disappearances, adjusted for traffic volume, is not statistically remarkable. We know that the legend was largely constructed by writers who were more interested in a good story than in accurate research.
And we know
because Lawrence David Cushé spent years checking that many of the incidents described in Bermuda Triangle literature are inaccurate, exaggerated, or simply invented. But we also know something else. Something that the debunkers, for all their careful research, do not fully account for. The ocean is genuinely dangerous. Not because of anything supernatural, not because of Atlantean crystals or alien technology or interdimensional portals, but because it is vast and deep and indifferent and full of forces that we do not entirely understand. The methane hydrates are real. The rogue waves are real. The unpredictable weather is real. The geological activity beneath the ocean floor is real. The Puerto Rico Trench, 8 kilometers deep, is real. And the disappearances are real, whatever caused them.
Perhaps the most honest thing that can be said about the Bermuda Triangle is this: it is a mirror in which we see our own relationship with the unknown. The ocean has always been the great other for humanity, the thing that exists beyond the edge of the known world, that swallows what we send into it, that returns nothing of what it takes. Before the Bermuda Triangle, there were sea monsters. There were the edges of maps marked with "Here be dragons." There was the Kraken and the Maelstrom and the Flying Dutchman and the Sirens.
We have always needed to believe that the ocean contains something more than water and depth and darkness. Something intentional. Something that chooses. Something that reaches up from below and takes. The Bermuda Triangle is our generation's version of "Here be dragons." A way of saying, this place is not safe. This place is unknown. This place has power over us that we cannot explain or control. And that feeling that there are places in the world where the normal rules do not apply is not irrational. It is human. It is as old as the first person who stood at the edge of the sea and looked out at the horizon and wondered what was out there.
Tonight, you have traveled through one of the world's great mysteries. You have sailed with the USS Cyclops into silence. You have flown with Lieutenant Taylor into a darkening sky. You have stood on the ocean floor of the Puerto Rico Trench, 8 kilometers down in the cold and the dark, and looked up at the surface far above. You have heard the theories and the science and the stories of those who went through and came back. And you have arrived, as most people who cross the Bermuda Triangle do, safely at your destination, lying in the warmth of your bed, on solid ground. Sea is still out there,
Vast and dark and patient, keeping its secrets, keeping everything it has ever taken. And somewhere in the deep, in the cold and the silence and the pressure, the USS Cyclops rests on the bottom, intact or crushed or scattered. No one knows.